On this episode of American Grindstone, we're sitting down with Mark Treas. He's going to teach us how to count cards, and we're going to learn a little bit about some business strategy as well. Check it out.
The Grindstone.
My sonny boy kept his nose to the grindstone.
Never give up, never surrender.
Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here, man. I've been looking forward to this since the beginning.
Yes.
I met you a couple years ago
Yep.
at the Northwood Market.
That's right.
I was restocking the cigar humidor.
Yes.
You came in to buy some items from the
Yes.
market,
Yep.
and
Oh, no way.
we just instantly hit it off. We just could tell two extroverts
Yep.
in a room just become magnetized
Yep.
to one another
Around a cigar case.
around a cigar
Yeah.
case.
A
It was-
beacon, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
And then as I just kept running into you, I thought, I like this guy.
Yeah.
He's a brother in the Lord. He's a friend. He's he's an entrepreneur. He's got a lot of crazy ideas. He's got a lot of weird things he's done. My kind of person.
You know what? I like the cut of your jib, too.
Yeah.
I dig it. I really do.
I'll
It's pretty
take
great. Yeah.
It's a whole jib.
It's a jib.
We need to bring that back.
Yeah, we'll bring
That's
jib
the
back.
people's
Guys,
jibs.
I don't know what a jib is.
I don't either.
Okay.
Oh, man, I
know
do
what
not.
a pog is,
Oh,
but
yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Pogs.
Yeah.
We could go there, but too much ADHD for us to stay there too long.
No, you can't.
Mark, you are an entrepreneur,
Mm-hmm.
a business consultant, an idea man. You also are a advantage player at blackjack.
Yep.
We're going to dive into all those things
Cool.
today. But I always like to start the podcast talking with folks about kind of tell me about your childhood, about how you grew up. Because I think a lot of the things that we develop as kids, they really kind of play into where we're at as adults. So.
Yeah,
100%.
I agree. All right. Well, I'll play the tapes back, and then we'll kind of maybe land mostly at blackjack. Probably is the best way to go about that. So I was born in Cincinnati to mom and dad. I'm one of four brothers total. So, I grew up in the Midwest. So Cincinnati, right across the river is Kentucky. So I actually grew up in Kentucky. I married my cousin. Just kidding.
It happens.
I'm just kidding. She's my sister.
I was like, all right, Ryan, don't smile on this one.
Yeah. So, like life for me growing up, it was, if you looked at it from the outside, it looked pretty standard, really vanilla. So mom, dad, house, went to church on Sunday. And unfortunately, the early childhood for me was not what it looked like from the outside. Grew up with just crazy amount of trauma. And basically all the worst imaginable ways was what was happening inside of my home from our biological father. And so it was a really challenging place to be. And throw a little confusion on that. He was a deacon at the church, and no drugs, no alcohol. He's a really good looking guy, but he was really sick. And when I was about 9 years old or 10, I reported what was happening to me. And over a short period of time, my mother, she fled, had to go connected to the Women's Crisis Center. And really the story just took a really severe turn, but in a good way.
That was like super brave of you, 9 years old. I can't imagine that.
I can't imagine it either.
Yeah.
I have a 9-year-old.
Yeah,
Right?
me too.
I jumped on the kid this morning before I left for work, and he's a 9-year-old. He's like a normal kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I have a lot of empathy and a lot of connection to people who are coming from deep scars, because that's just the world that I grew up in. So, and I loved my biological father. It's just what I knew, but I knew what was going on with me was not right. I was really sick. I was bulimic. So just living in so much anxiety. And so my mother, my mom got married at 19 years old.
Yeah.
She was a kid. And once all this came out, she kind of fled, as so many women do who are battered, and you kind of can't help it. You go inward because you don't know what safe is. And eventually, my mom got out of that environment, and we did as well. And my mother, who had never really had a job in her entire life, is now a single mother with 4 kids. He got all the properties in the business, and she got the kids. Which I don't know which one won in that deal, but Mom says she won.
Yeah.
I think she did too.
In the end.
In the end,
Yeah. Maybe
So-
during the ordeal.
So my mother remarries a divorced, bankrupt, unemployed preacher. And so it's like this train wreck and a train wreck. They just somehow inched along in their train wreck fashion and had a greater train wreck.
Yeah.
And in that place, all sorts of redemption and healing and goodness came out of it.
I was hoping you'd say that.
It did. It really did. So that man eventually adopted me at 16. And so I got a new name. I got a new father. And he really reset the trajectory of my life in terms of just what does it look like to be a man?
Yeah.
What does it look like to treat a woman properly? What does it look like to have love for myself, to connect with God?
Yeah.
Because as you can imagine, a lot of those things were pretty warped.
Oh, for sure.
Like when that source of like spiritual training is also the source of like torture.
Yeah. The most, influential religious person in your life is also doing the worst things. It's like, well, I don't know what to.
Who's also my dad.
Yeah. Father and father. It's very confusing.
Yeah, totally. So anyway, so that kind of, I was raised up in that environment. And for me, I became a person who really needed to find meaning. And I think that's a pretty common thing when people are coming from such hard conditions is you just got to find some kind of purpose. And so I spent a lot of my teenage years out in the woods, started to just write more and more, and started getting into poetry. And I was just trying to figure out, like, what is all this about? Like, what is life about? And eventually got to the point where I was ready to start to pray and say, like, is there a God? And God, are you God? And everything I've ever heard is subject because, rightfully so. And I had a couple, I don't know what else to call them, but some spiritual encounters. And throughout that process, I left, look, here's what I said. I said, God, I'm going to kill myself if you don't reveal yourself to me.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of a risky thing to do.
I've never been a very good bluffer, or I'm great at it.
Yes.
Or
Yes.
And he did, and he did, and it really reset my life. And I started the teachings of Jesus became really real to me, and I started being able to see the difference between its application in some really bad ways, and like just the pure teachings of Jesus. And anyway, that set me into a different path. So I graduated high school. I wanted to be an artist. My mother, who's terrifying, and I love my mom, basically was like, you're going to college or I'm going to damage you. So
art school?
Oh, Mom, I married one of those. But so I ended up, got a degree in counseling. I was terrible at it, not particularly interested. My original intention was to go in and help people who came out of trauma, like myself. The one thing I knew I was never going to be, under any conditions, was a business person. Like, they're the worst, right?
Yeah.
They're square, they're greedy, they're exploitative. I was like, the one thing I'll never do is like have to dress up or something. It's like, that's the worst.
Sell your soul to be the guy that wears the necktie.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's just the worst to me. And so I was actually planning on taking a job at a Vineyard Church, and I was really deep into the interview process. And while there, I just was like, this isn't right for me, and I need to find out if these teachings can be more transformative than just in the context of church. But do these teachings begin to transform the world around us? And so I was sitting on this kind of like really challenging place for me internally. And I was like, no, I'm not. And so I withdrew my application or whatever to take the job. And I came home and I told my parents, I was like, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to go into business instead. And so I did.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a shock to even yourself, I'm sure. You're like, wait, what?
I
What's the
know. It was
trajectory of
like,
this?
I just was like, what does it look like to multiply good on the earth? And that's really how I got into business, was how do we take good things and multiply them? And I was like, I don't know. And eventually I was like, the marketplace is the way to do that. And so I've kind of been on this quest and journey of trying to produce and create things that I think are cool and meaningful. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about that, like kind of how that led me to blackjack. But I'd say from a process perspective, I'm kind of lazy. And so I've always just looked for like, well, where can I put a nickel in and get a quarter out?
Gotcha. A little easy ways.
Right. It's like when I would do schoolwork, it was like, well, how could I memorize this? Like, I was a pretty good student, but my rule was like, well, I'll figure out a way to memorize everything. I'll forget it the next day.
Yeah.
But I'll get an A on the test like tomorrow.
Yeah.
But so that's kind of like how I did my entire world. But so anyway, when I was out of college, I started flipping houses. Because I was like, okay, well, start somewhere. And my grandfather, who's an entrepreneur, he ran a company that was just so cool to me. It's 155 years old, I think, now.
Wow.
So it's been in the family for a long time. And when I saw my grandfather retire, I was in high school, and it was one of the most powerful things I've ever seen. And it was because these men have worked with my grandfather their entire life. 40 years, 50 years, some of these people.
Jeez. Wow.
And when he retired, the honor they gave him. And I was like, I want to be like that one.
Yeah.
Like, if that's this new version of what it looks like to be a business person,
Yeah.
that's cool. Because he had, countless lives living off of that business.
Yeah.
Depending on him and honoring him with that, that's nuts.
Yeah, it was really neat. So anyway, I was flipping houses and I was doing ministry, and what I didn't really ever want to do was get paid to do ministry, because I'm like kind of lazy and I like to find hacks.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm gonna end up being one of those dudes on TV. They're like, oh, if you send me your life savings, I'll send you the tissue that I just blew in.
Yes.
And
And you'll be blessed.
you'll be blessed.
Go.
God bless you, because you just sneezed, or I sneezed, and here's my boogies.
I sneeze and here's my boogies.
For
That is the slogan right
$5.99,
there.
All right. So
$10.99, I'll send my tears.
So I was living with a guy, and we were in a house church community in Cincinnati area. And
I love that.
Yeah, it was super fun. And I got introduced to these guys, and they're from Washington, and they started playing cards for a living. My grandmother was a really nasty card player, and so she taught me cards when I was really young. I really like cards, and but I was really opposed to it because they're playing blackjack. And
Oh, yeah, the devil's card game.
we don't gamble.
Yeah.
You know, my grandmother told me gambling wasn't a sin, but she said it's something foolish people do. Okay.
Sounds like something I say to my kids now.
Not a sin, but it's like
I really want to do it,
she
but
told me, she's like, if you want to be poor, become a gambler. I was
Yeah.
like, "Okay, I don't want to become that. I already am. So anyway, I eventually got over the kind of essence, like my existential problem with blackjack, and I actually read the book, and I was like, this is exactly the way I think. And so that eventually led me into blackjack. So I left the youth pastor job and became a gambler.
What book?
Instead.
You read a book. I want to know what book it is that causes a man to apostate from his faith and apostatize.
What book did you read to put the other one down?
There's a book by a guy named Stanford Wong. There's a few like quintessential card counting books out there.
Yeah.
I read them. They made sense to me. I talked to the guys that started this team, and I just went right into the hole of study. And I was like, I'm gonna play blackjack, and while I play blackjack, I'm gonna learn how to start businesses. So that was kind of like, I told my wife, we were just married, and I had this great idea. I was like, hey, we're gonna learn blackjack together. We're gonna travel, and like while we're playing, we'll learn how to start companies. And she was like, that's a terrible idea.
And business was your side hustle to blackjack.
Yeah.
I didn't know that till right now.
That's wild. That's
Business
wild.
was the side hustle of blackjack. So.
The blackjack was the first.
She learned alongside of me, but it was not her forte.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely mine. So that's how I got into blackjack. Yeah.
So help me understand this.
Okay.
Isn't blackjack just a game of chance? Like how do you learn the game of blackjack besides learning the rules and just playing it a bunch? Like what you're talking about seems a little bit more formulaic than that.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. A whole book on it, right?
Yeah, that's right. So all, like when you go to a casino, which I never went to a casino in my entire life except for professionally. So I've never gambled before. I listened to Grandma. The only time I ever gambled, I walked in, my first time at a casino, I put $1 in a slot machine, and I thought I was going to pull a little lever, but there isn't one. You press a little button.
Yeah.
Bing.
Is it turkey in it?
I was like, where's my dollar?
Oh, yeah.
Where's my little, like, I don't even get any tickets. Like, nothing came out. And I was like, this is frustrating.
Yes.
So
There's nothing left
there's
over.
nothing left in it. I was like, at least want the claw, but so blackjack is a different game though. So in all the casino games, we all measure them by the odds, and of all the games in a casino, blackjack is for advantage players. Most consider blackjack to be the most beatable game.
Okay.
And the reason it's beatable, and the reason blackjack's the most popular game, is because it's the game that you're going to lose on the least.
Okay.
In a casino.
Okay.
You're going to lose the least in
amount.
blackjack.
But the assumption is you're going to lose at every game, but you're going to lose the least at blackjack.
Yeah, you're going to lose. That's why they have nicer carpets than you do.
Yes.
In the casino. Like, you're going to lose.
Yeah.
But it's such a fun, and it actually is a fun game for people because it's the game you're going to win the most at.
Yeah.
If you flip that the other way.
Sure.
But to the casino, it's the game that you're going to lose the least at.
Sure. No, that makes sense.
Makes sense?
Yeah. Yep.
Which makes it the most winnable game from a player perspective. So with blackjack, these guys, these really smart dudes, they figured out a way to memorize and track where the cards are in any given amount of decks. And we call that card counting. And
Okay.
the process is, well, not cheating, because cheating is completely against the law. Like, big trouble. All we're doing is just using our minds. So we're just using a system that allows us to see the same mess, the chaos that everybody else sees, but we have a system that brings order out of the chaos.
Yeah.
And then it tells you what to do once you figure out the order.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
The algorithm, shall we say.
the algorithm. I'm not smart enough to use that word, but yeah.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
then, so correct me if I'm wrong.
Sure.
You go to a casino, they think you might be card counting, and they're like, get out of here.
Yeah.
Correct, right?
Well, normally, let's say a normal person goes to the casino.
Yeah.
And they think they're card counting. They all do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So the margin of error in card counting is quite small. So generally speaking, because it's to a casino's advantage if you're like, oh, I'm going to watch a couple YouTube videos on card counting.
Yeah.
Great.
Yes.
Come on in,
guys.
Because we're going to take all your money.
Come on in, because we know you're not going to go deep enough or have the discipline enough to actually deploy this strategy to the degree that it needs to be a tip over.
Yeah.
But there is a tip
Interesting.
over. And there's a real tip over. And once you understand how to break the system and you can execute on it with discipline and consistency,
Yeah.
Then they start.
then they start to know who you are.
Yeah.
And then they start to kick you out.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah. So
That's wild to me.
Yeah.
I feel like they should be able to kick you out.
right. And it varies depending on where they are. And I'm not up to speed right now with blackjack law like I used to be.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll just give you the best resource for the listeners. If you're interested in blackjack, learning the game, there's a website called blackjackapprenticeship.com.
I love the name.
Yes.
It started one by the co-founders of the team.
Yeah. And he's in Seattle, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's the most authoritative resource online in the world on card counting. And it has just been going on for years and years and years of training people how to count cards.
It's crazy.
And so it's really deep. It's a good entry point, but it will take you all the way down the hole that you need to go on. And it's top notch. So.
Wow.
So you're reading this book, you're
Okay.
studying that.
So I read this book and I was like, okay, this makes sense to me. So I told my wife, and for me, when I focus on something, I was saying this to you guys earlier, like nothing else in the world exists.
Yeah.
Once something's like, in the center.
Yes.
So
What
I
did
was
you
just
call it? You
tunnel
called
vision.
it the Eye of Sauron.
that's what my wife calls it.
Yeah.
It's
Where you
Sauron.
just kind of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. So
It's great, by the way. That's great.
it's good when I'm cooking dinner, right? It's like the only thing in the world that matters,
Yes.
but it's not good for everything else. So, but for card counting was really useful. So I spent 30 days. I did 10 hours a day, sometimes 12. I locked myself in a library, and I was like, I'm just going to memorize this. And so I worked every day, and then at night I would just review, and then before bed I would rewrite all my charts. And after about a month, I flew to Seattle, And so I didn't know what I was getting into when I joined this team.
Mm-hmm.
So when I thought about joining a team of card counters, so let me give some context.
Yeah.
A guy from my church had a brother-in-law who was riding a bike and got hit by a car in Virginia, got sued, got some extra cash, read a book, same book, figured out how to do card counting, put a small team together, started building a bigger team.
Ocean's 11.
Kind of like Ocean's 11.
Yeah.
So, and they were based out of Seattle, and I heard about this thing. So it's through like family connections and
Source to a source to a source
exactly.
to a source.
Yeah.
So I thought I was like going to this like professional thing. You know?
Yeah.
I was 23. I was just married and got out the airplane. I've never been to the Pacific Northwest before, never crossed the Mississippi before.
Yeah.
As soon as I got off the mountain or off the airplane, I looked up and I saw Mount Rainier and I was like, this is the place for me. And I'm going to go climb that hill.
Yeah.
And I still haven't made it up it yet to the top. But
we call them hills around here.
that little
for
hill.
Sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, so we went straight to a casino and we just started doing what we call a test out. And the test out is simply, we're measuring and tracking the degree of proficiency you are at all the multiple steps of counting cards. And it was this really awesome experience. It was like super stressful for me. But the guy who picked me up, who runs the Blackjack Apprenticeship website, tattoos and a Subaru like you do up here. And
And everyone.
So that night, I was
not us though.
Yeah, not these guys.
No,
that night, I was with these two, and I had never met the guys before. And we were in the hot tub, and it was like kindred spirits kind of deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like hanging out with you guys. And I was like, listen, I'm either going to own this team or I'm going to run it. So let's figure out what we're going to do. I had no idea why I said that. I didn't know how to run a blackjack team. I just thought
You were working on your
I
poker
must have
face.
just watched like
bro.
I probably watched like a YouTube video beforehand on how to be strong because I had no idea what I was doing. And anyway, they were like, "Well, yeah, I guess you should be the other manager." And so instead of there being two, there became three, and we managed. There was three of us that managed the blackjack team, and it just made sense to me. So maybe we should talk about what card counting is. Yeah.
American Grindstone is brought to you by Treas, the ultimate gear for the modern adventurer. Whether you're hitting the trails, exploring the city, or just navigating everyday life, Treas has you covered. Here is the Contour. It's my own personal everyday carry. The Contour is Treas' sleek and durable wallet that is designed to be your EDC companion. Made from top grain leather and precision engineered metal, the Contour not only looks great, but is built to withstand whatever life throws at you. But that's not all. Treas also offers a wide range of rugged belts, their skeletonized field knife, and the ever-popular OG 2.0, as well as other essentials that blend form and function seamlessly. Elevate your everyday carry with Treas, where style meets durability. Treas, earn your story. So, Mark, take us through it. Like, tell us a little bit about card counting and,
All right,
and
so-
how it
So
works.
these are cards.
These are
Playing
cards.
Okay, good.
So it's really like it's first is kind of like the understanding of what strategy is, right? So Michael Porter says strategy is knowing what to say no to, but essentially what we're doing is we're saying we're going to come in the cards and we're going to win the game. That's our objective. The method of how we're going to do that is we're going to do it by deploying a strategy that allows us to consistently know with a degree of approximation how many face cards are left in the deck versus low cards.
Okay.
Right? So the goal is for the cards that are going to be played, if you had a magic wand as a player, all you would ever receive are 10 jacks, queen, kings, and aces. Right? And everybody else would get all the low stuff.
Yeah.
So in card counting, you're not actually counting, like we have a single deck here, you're not counting all 52 cards, you're counting them in 3 groups.
Gotcha.
You're counting them and you're assigning a value to these 3 groups.
Okay.
And then the end of this is after you do a round of counting, you can actually tell properly how many more high cards are left to be played versus low cards.
Got it.
The more high cards that are left to be played, the more valuable the hand is.
Got it.
Right? So that makes sense?
Yes, it does.
So the way we do that is we first create 3 groups and we call them +1, 0, -1.
Okay.
So 2 through 6 has a value of +1.
Uh-huh.
7, 8, 9 is nothing,
Yep.
neutral, so it's 0. 10 through ace is -1.
Got it.
When we actually teach people how to count cards, we teach them to say D1, because in your brain you can say D1 faster than
-1.
-1.
Yeah.
And eventually you have to be able to say this very, very fast, because counting
Interesting.
it gets really, really quick. But, so all we're really doing is we are tracking how many cards are left in the table or left in the deck, and then given the situation, depending on how many are left, it then informs you on what behavior to do on the table.
Okay.
Right? So after you've played, so let's say we've played a couple rounds and I realize, like, whoa, there's quite a few, let's say there's 10 more face cards left in this little deck right here.
Yeah.
Right? And there's been 8 small cards that have been played out. The value of this hand, the probability of you getting a high ranking hand and the dealer busting is substantially higher. So now, once we know we're in a good environment, and again, it has nothing to do with how you feel. We're just trusting the framework.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Right? So you have to be super disciplined about trusting the framework. But once you know that, all of a sudden, it's just like investing. You're like, dude, the time is right.
Yeah.
Because you see everything line up.
You know the probability just went up that I'm going to win. And so now I'm going to raise my bets, sometimes substantially. And so now we just had a bet swing, right? So for me, when I would go into a casino, I would go in at $200, maybe approximately, right? And if it's like we're getting into that more advantageous situation, I'm now playing $2,000 a hand.
Yeah.
Right.
Got it.
And instead of playing one hand, because I'm just trying to get the cards to where they're viable,
Yeah.
this is like very aggressive. I'll play all 7 hands
Oh, wow.
at $2,000 a hand.
Oh, wow.
So you can play the whole table.
Right.
Got it.
So this is the most dramatic example. Right?
Yeah.
Most exact
Yeah.
would be I'm playing it for $25.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I like the situation, I'm playing all 7 hands at $2,000 a hand.
Got it.
Gotcha.
Right? So that's how this thing works. The way I know what to do is by counting these cards. And once I do that, and I've played these $2,000 hands, I then, once the cards are laying out, then there's a bunch of spreadsheets that you memorize. And it's saying that if the dealer has a 5 and you have an ace-6, the question is, do you hit, do you stand, or do you double?
Yeah.
And so you memorize these spreadsheets that are filled with what we call deviations.
Yeah.
It's just if-thens. It's the algorithm, right?
Yeah.
If there's more of these nice cards, then double.
Got it.
Gotcha.
Basically, it's all it's saying.
But if it's, the ones or whatever, then it's like, okay, well, maybe we stand back.
Then you'll take a hit, or you'll,
Yeah.
and it just, so the memorization part is really about just memorizing these spreadsheets.
Yeah.
And that takes people a lot of work.
Yeah.
Like, it takes a little bit of time. So maybe we could deal out a hand.
Yes.
You want to try?
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
You guys know how to play blackjack?
Yes.
All right.
I'm not. I mean, I somewhat know how to
And
play
disclaimer,
blackjack.
I have been out of blackjack for some time, right?
Okay.
So instead of running blackjack systems, I run business systems. But to me, they're basically identical.
Sure.
Yeah.
And Chipotle has a system. Like, there's a system for everything you want to get,
Yes.
Yeah.
right? So, like, I've got a system for getting the largest burrito in the history of mankind at Chipotle. And for years, I fed my family of 7 off of a single burrito, all basically because we had a nice little strategy. So here we go. I'm just dealing out raw cards here. I don't know what we're getting. We're going to practice.
Yeah.
I like how everything has a system, and you're like, and I'm gonna find that system.
Yeah,
And I'm
We're
gonna
going to play to win, all right?
I love it.
All right, so here we go. So we're going to count these cards. So remember, 7, 8, 9, 0. 10 through king, or 10 through ace is -1, and 2 through 6 is +1. So we would call this
This guy here is a -1
-1 plus,
plus my 1.
well, that's a 0 and a
Zero.
0. So
Oh, sorry,
Yep.
0.
you're right. And then,
0, 0.
so these are worth 1, 1, and
Oh, yes.
1. So we were at -1,
Yeah.
and now we go 0. Now we're at 1, 1, 1. So we say this in our head, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, because you're going the running count.
Gotcha.
So we call this a running count. You're running as the cards are rolling out. It's called a running count. So now we're at a 1. Now we have this card's worth 0. This is worth 1. So now we're at a 2.
Got it.
2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. And then we're going to count this card, which is 3.
Yep.
So the running count is
3.
3. Now
Yeah.
what's going to happen is we have to take 3 divided into the amount of decks remaining, and that gives us this thing called a true count. So if we're in Vegas, let's say we're playing a 6 deck. what we would say is, let's say there were 6 full decks here, and we had a running count of 3. This is it. This is the end of the complexity. We take the running count, we divide it into the number of decks remaining to be played.
Okay.
And that answer equals what we call a true count, and the true count is the one that's informing your behaviors.
Got it.
So you have a running count, you have a simple piece of division. I'm talking like 6th grade level division.
Yeah.
And then you just know how to play blackjack.
Yeah.
That's what you
And eventually they arrest you, and it's really exciting.
They kick you. It's not illegal,
Oh yeah.
but they
But
detain you, and
they are happy to detain you, right?
Yes.
So
they want to know all of your movements
Exactly.
from here forward.
so the way it would deal out, so we were at a what was our running count?
3.
three.
Three.
Yep.
Let's count. So D1, 1, 2, 3, 3. So you're going to wave off the 18. Let's just say you're going to take a hit,
Yep.
right? So now we're at what's our running count?
3.
4.
Four now. Yes.
And what do you have here for your score? It's hard to do that kind of quickly.
21.
21.
Four. So when we're training people right now in your head, you have to go 4.
Yeah.
4. 5. So you have to count the running count
Yeah.
before you count your total hand,
Got it.
Gotcha.
right? So you have to do these things in order. Oh,
So you're going. But you're going.
yeah. 5. So eventually you get to the point where you can count like I can count this and I don't even know how I know what it is. I just know
It's just programmed.
I can see it, and I just know what the count is. But that took a while, and so let's just say you shouldn't take a hit there, but you take another one. Now we're at
Yeah.
5
19.
Now, right? 6.
66. Oh yeah, first count.
so most likely.
I'm so bad at this.
Most likely, this is going to be a
So
10.
much worse. Okay.
Let's see. Nope, I stuck the deck.
Okay.
All right, so 7, 8, 9, dealer bust.
Yep.
So that's what happens when you have a really high running count. Is the dealer just bust?
Yeah.
Right? So we're going to play one more. Now watch what happens.
Okay.
So our running count, let's just, I actually wasn't paying attention. Let's say it's 9.
Okay. And those cards are now out of the deck.
They're done,
Okay.
right? So this is what's left. Now this is a really good situation because we've got about 2/3 of a deck.
Yep.
We should start seeing
Yeah.
Face cards.
a lot of face cards. And if I were you, I'd play 3 hands because you guys are such
I am a baller.
You're just
Sorry.
total
Clearly.
I mean, obviously me.
All right. So you got 14. Now, right now,
Ooh.
your butt should pucker a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, because you just threw up a face card.
Yeah. So I'm going to check to see. And I don't have 21. So what we do now in this situation, because you guys just increased your bets because you're a holy roller, you're high rollers.
Yes.
So we were at like 6. So we just check all these for the score. So now we're down to 4. That
Yeah, 'cause you got your
neutralizes,
negatives.
and then these 2 neutralize. So we're at 4. And so now you just simply play your hand. So
Yeah.
you just take a hit.
Yep. Take a hit there.
You bust.
Bust.
Yep.
You're at 16. You stand.
Yeah,
You
yep.
take a hit. You
Yep.
bust. You don't take a hit. You take a hit. 19.
19.
12. 14. You bust.
Yep.
So
One hand.
one hand. You lost a lot of money there.
I did.
Yeah.
It wasn't the best moment for me.
Yeah. So that's really it, guys. I mean, that's it. That's blackjack. That's all you do right there.
Got it.
Easy peasy. You can do it in your sleep.
Yeah, absolutely.
No,
I'm
yeah.
s-
No pressure. No.
You know where I'm going after this.
We're heading to the Northwood.
You guys, you're gonna make it. You're gonna crush it. You're
Do
gonna
they have
start an
blackjack at
empire.
Northwood Casino?
Yeah, you guys are gonna want to check back on this podcast. Maybe last Monday, if I got arrested at the
Exactly.
Northwood, is what you're gonna look up. Now, speaking of being arrested and all that, I mean, tell me some of these stories. What was the craziest of those moments of like, oh, we are getting grabbed. We are
Yeah.
being.
Yeah. So, well, I have authority issues, right? So I don't trust them. And so, what I didn't really predict getting into blackjack was that casinos would be aggressive, right? And they do. They can get really aggressive. They're really hostile. And
I've seen some movies.
yeah, you know, the way it works, right? They're like
Frankie.
they're like, come in and play a game and make money.
Yeah.
Well, we figured out how to do that. And then when you do that, they make you leave, and they can be pretty rude about the process. And so for me, it was like, oh, we're kind of picking a fight here.
Yeah.
And that's kind of energizing.
Yes,
you
it
know,
is.
like,
Yeah, that's-
let's go cause some trouble around here. And so I would get kicked out of casinos, and our team was amazing. It was composed, I think at the highest, we had 36 players across the country.
Holy cow.
I think that was our peak number. most of us,
Yeah, you can play back.
most of us in various forms of Christian ministry to some degree.
Yeah.
And so it was a really odd group. And so the way the blackjack team would work is it was all relational network. And somebody would recommend you to join our team. And if you lived on my half of the country, you'd fly to Cincinnati, and I would, I'd meet with you. And if I felt like you had the right kind of stuff about you, then I'd start training you on how to count cards, and we'd go through the
Interesting. So you'd bring people in that didn't necessarily count cards. You're just kind of looking for a few.
We never hired gamblers.
Got it.
So if you had a hobby of gambling, you were not a good fit for our team.
Yeah.
And it's interesting why. And it's not because of, it's actually has nothing to do with gambling per se. It has to do with paradigm. So if you are oriented like that without like a degree of like success already. So there's a difference between people who like to gamble and people who like to just play games.
Yeah.
But people who have like a really strong interest in gambling, we rarely would hire those people because they have the perspective of a gambler. And empathy to anybody who really struggles with anything for addiction-wise, like count me on the list.
Yeah.
But the problem is your perspective is you don't really understand the logic of math.
You said that earlier too when you were like, but if you just trust this,
You have to trust it.
You
have to trust it.
Yeah.
You have to trust it.
So it's a either you have that ability to be able to get into that zone, and or if you already have that like kind of gambling instincts to kind of.
And you probably there's plenty of people out there who are great at gambling, who'd be great at card counting, but it wasn't a good fit for our team.
Yeah.
Right. So, but what I would do is then I would just come and I'd start to train you in the process, and then you'd have to it just takes people time, a lot of head trash you work through, and then my job was to, as far as I could tell, because I joined the team and I want to be freaking awesome.
You want to be the best.
Yeah.
I want to be the best, and it's very important to me. And so I started working with my colleagues, and I was like, this system isn't really like, how come you're not doing card counting the right way? And as we started smoking out a lot of impurities in our team, and that was a good experience. It really, that was what, I've been a trainer ever since card counting. Like I've run training companies. I'm a trainer now, but that really started in card counting, which was I had
at 23, right?
Yeah, I had to start figuring out why people think like when you're training someone card counting, it's like you're making a system error. You just don't know why, and I don't know why yet, and it's very stressful. So people would typically they call them flukes. Oh, I made that mistake because it was a fluke. And I believed that for the first like 350 times.
Yeah.
And now I don't believe in flukes.
Yeah.
Right. There's always a system that's leading. There's clearly, exceptions, but so speed up blackjack. I started playing blackjack. I loved it. I was like, this is like my ADHD goes away under pressure.
Yep.
And I just felt so much pressure.
Yeah.
And my first casino I ever went to was there was one right off SeaTac. I can't remember what it's called. It's a total
Right as you got in.
I thought it was gonna be
To the first one.
glorious. Yeah. It's like we always say, it's like a bunch of grandmas smoking cigarettes and kid in sweaters. It was like not
Emerald Queen maybe it was
Yeah.
or something.
That's
what it was.
Not cool. But yeah, it just started making sense to me, like the speed of it, and I enjoyed it. And well, anyway, so we built the team up. I started going to Vegas pretty frequently. So my rhythm was, I would go to Vegas, I'd play blackjack, I'd come home, I would teach Bible, 4, 5, 6 times a week, and then I'd start trying to learn how to start a business. So I was like reading books on HTML and PHP and Photoshop. I bought a book on how to do Photoshop.
Not PCP. PHP.
Oh, I use PCP to get me through the boring coding.
Just wanted to make sure.
It was a tough time.
Yeah, it was the worst of times. It was the best of times.
I had to go out and get my own poppies, figure out how that worked.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is just an example, but I was playing in Vegas. This is at the end of my career. I was playing in Vegas, and started off my Vegas career with like limos. Everywhere we went was like high roller, and I started getting kicked out.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is disappointing.
Yeah.
I liked it when you picked me up in limousines, not when you threatened to like hurt me.
Yes.
And so I was like, well, my game's dried up. So I went and changed my name, which is $54.
Really?
No.
Okay.
What happened?
Wait, you legally changed your name?
Because everything comes from something. I got adopted as a teenager. I had my name legally changed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, I bet I could just change my name. So I changed my name legally. got
Amazing.
and got a whole new
Genius.
player. Went back in.
That's a perfect example, by the way, of why we talk about these backstories. That's
Yes,
amazing.
exactly.
And then I did it again, and then I eventually tried to change my name to Mark Zuckerberg. I promise.
Did you really try to?
At Newport, Kentucky? I was like, oh, this is awesome. I got a great idea.
Yeah.
So the judge is like, why do you want to change your name? Like this document. I was like, so that I can win more money at casinos, because I wasn't going to lie.
Yeah.
Sure.
And it was like, name change, Mark Zuckerberg. And she rejected it.
Oh, really?
Because it was like round 3 or 4. And she's like, you have to take your name more seriously.
More seriously.
No
I've never been more
refund.
serious.
No way.
Yeah.
No refund. So anyway, at the
So-
time, Mark Jones is playing. I think that was my name at the time.
You kept your first name, but you changed your last
yeah.
name.
I love how you said, I think that
It was
was
Mark
my
Jones.
name at the time.
And I chose Mark Jones because of the rap song, like Mark Jones.
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
act like
yeah,
you don't
yeah,
know
yeah,
the name.
yeah.
I thought that would
Yeah.
be cool. So
Heck yeah, it was.
right. So anyway, this night I'm playing at on the Strip, and I was actually training some guys, these vets who came in from Iraq, and they had some extra money to blow, and so I was teaching them through blackjack apprenticeship. And that night I had on like high top Air Force Ones that are like sparkly, and the casinos gave them to me. I had on camo pants that were sagged way low. I went to the costume shop and I bought a bunch of jewelry. So I had on a big fake platinum cross and a fake nose ring
Yes.
and a bunch of pinky like rings. I was just hat. I was like,
You were?
oh,
Mark
actually,
Jones.
Mark
Mark
Jones. Don't act like you don't know the name. And so,
You're like,
I was teaching the guys, and then I was like, our session was over. I was like, well, I'll just go out and play. I was pretty much done at this time, but I was like, I'll go play for the team a little bit. Our bankroll was down, so I was like, I'll try to go win some money for us.
Yeah.
So I went out and I started playing, and you don't know where a night is going to go in blackjack.
Okay.
So the highest amount I ever made on a single shoe was $46,000.
Holy cow.
That night, in 2 hours, I made $92,000 at one casino in 2 hours in Las Vegas.
Oh my gosh.
2 hours. The
Whoa.
following 7 hours, I lost about 60 of it.
Holy cow.
So you have these crazy swings. You just don't know how a night's going to go. You just keep doing the process. Trust the framework, no matter what, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, back to my story. I was like, well, I'll see how this goes. And so I was playing at the Wynn Casino, which is just gorgeous. Like the property's stunning. Like they don't know this when I met them in the courtroom, but I'm a giant fan.
Okay.
Like,
yeah.
it's just such stunning architecture and design. And I love this stuff, right? So I'm like, oh, it's so amazing in here. But when you're playing blackjack, they have the security. We call it, it's like getting hot, like heat, because they're looking at you.
Yeah.
Right. And they're seeing you. And my last time at the Wynn, I was playing with this guy who was this really good looking dude.
Yeah.
And at the time, I didn't know anything about sports. And the guy left to go to the bathroom. They were like, that's Tom Brady. And I was like, who's Tom Brady?
I'm
And
Mark Jones.
I went to the bathroom and I looked and I was like, oh, it's this like model quarterback guy. Now that I'm a football fan, he's destroyed us. But
Yes.
So these are the guys. I'm in the high limits room is where I'm playing. Right.
Yeah.
So I have no business being in there. So anyway, it's getting hot, and then I realized like these guys, they're coming.
Yeah.
And so
multiple Blazers showing up.
they're coming. So I was down like 30 grand, right? Something. So I just grabbed my chips and I just started pulling them in, and they start coming at me, and I start walking away. Now, what they do is a trespass, and a trespass is where they read this document to you, and it's essentially saying you're not allowed back on our property. So my strategy was, well, if you can't read it to me because I'm not in proximity of you, then I'm not bound to your trespass.
Oh, that's good.
I love that.
I watched a lot of Judge Judy growing up. It made sense to me.
Yeah.
So-
Sound logic. Sound.
Right.
Yeah.
They start coming at me. I start like getting away. In my mind, I'm like, just get to the strip, get to the strip. But they start yelling. And I had this weird like fight or flight thing kick off, which the only thing worse than fighting in a casino is flighting in a casino.
Yeah. No. Yeah. For sure.
So they started chasing me, and I just kind of like panicked. I started running.
Oh no.
And I got outside, and it's like the only day in the history of life that it rained in Las Vegas that night. So I'm on this beautiful, like on the way in, I was like, look at these cobblestones. They're so perfect. Perfectly ice on my way out.
Yes.
So I'm running on the cobblestone, and this dude just goes monkey on my back, and he pulls me over, flips me upside down, and I like come to, and there's like a group of security guards screaming at me, and I call 911, like while the guy's on my chest, and the police come, and I'm like, I'm being detained against my will, because I was, and
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. That was like my biggest question of like, how can they do that?
Yeah.
Well, so it's private property.
Sure.
And, without a casino, there isn't a Nevada.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I understand it.
Yeah.
Right? And it changes where you are. But essentially, they're saying, you're not allowed to come back into my house and play the game anymore.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I just did.
Yeah.
And so I ended up going to jail.
You're
that
like,
night.
Mark Jones will not be
Mark
coming
Jones.
back.
Because once they read you the trespass, you're not allowed back there. And if you are, then that's when you find yourself in jail.
Theoretically.
Got it.
No, I mean, I've been trespassed 1,000 times. This has never happened before. I probably was just the straw that broke the camel's back. And I probably needed that to happen for myself as well. But jail was amazing. I found out that if you're a Christian and you're an extrovert and you're moderately sober and moderately innocent, it was really cool.
Yeah.
You're moderately sober
Not bad.
And moderately
and
innocent.
moderately
Like,
innocent. Yes.
So I just had the greatest time in jail. I ordered an egg white omelet from the lady that was asking me about tuberculosis, and they don't have those. But it was crazy, guys.
That's amazing.
It was crazy.
Sounds like fun.
So in jail, I noticed this thing. It was freezing. I've never been to jail before.
Yeah.
The only thing I knew from jail was Van Damme movies.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
That's all
You
I
better
knew.
make a shiv.
Exactly.
Yeah, you better
I was
Wrap a
like,
towel around your
You
arm.
better
Yeah,
know how to do
100%.
the splits, buddy.
100%.
'Cause-
So, what I learned was we're in this giant concrete room and it's freezing, and everybody's sitting like this the entire time. They're like freezing, and I was sitting there. I was like, why is it so cold in here? And there's only a toilet in the middle, and I get stage fright, so
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
be in that
Yeah.
toilet with crazy. It's crazy people.
Yeah.
Like, it was awesome. I'm like praying with people, but like freezing. And anyway, I learned afterwards. I was like, oh, that's why they do it. They keep it so cold because you're not violent when you're freezing.
That's true.
You're violent when you're hot. And so we have this Mercedes Sprinter with a rear air conditioning. And when my kids are being unruly, I call it the jail effect. And I just turn the AC down all the way. And I just frost those little buddies out. And they sit in their back seat.
You might say
And they
you might have
stop
saved my
touching each
life.
other.
Yeah, I got
That is
3 boys.
Parenting 101.
Yeah.
I did the Honda Odyssey little. All right, here we go.
Yeah. So Vegas, that was a lot of what my life was just going to Vegas, and at the highlights, like you'd make money, you'd have these phenomenal meals. At the lowlights, I mean, you would fly to a city. You'd fly to a city prepared to feed your family because it's a job. Like we got paid, and you get flagged, and in 1 hour you've been flagged at every casino in the region.
Oh, wow.
And so it was a grind. It was a grind. So
they talk to each other.
yeah,
And
they talk. And this is before like today. I'm really curious what it's like today.
Yeah, they're
But,
going to.
Yeah.
they'll know you quickly. So yeah, I went to jail for that. It was awesome. I got out. In fact, I got out of the jail, and they took all my money because they thought I was a drug dealer.
Oh,
Because I got like $150,000 in my pocket.
yeah.
And I looked like what I described.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Right.
Yeah,
And
the
I've
lip
got-
ring and the bling.
Yeah.
And Mark Jones.
Mark
And then when they
Jones.
find out it's all from a costume store, they're like, well,
I was like,
clearly.
careful, it's plastic, it'll break. Like,
Yeah.
Just careful, it'll snap.
He'll Ziploc it.
They didn't have jail shoes for me because I'm too big. So they
man.
let me wear my shoes, which is kind of cool. You know,
Nice.
kinda cool.
Your big J's.
But then I was like, I'm going to get killed in jail because I
Yes.
got the best shoes in here.
Yeah.
Anyway, they let me out that night, and it's in not by normal stuff in Las Vegas. And they just put you in this back door, and it's 4:30 in the morning, and they took every bit of my cash and gave me a check for it. So I've got like $100,000 of chips, a dead cell phone, and not a dollar to my name. And it's 4:30 in the morning, and I'm
way.
sitting in an alley.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate that.
And I had to walk. Like it was like 5 hours to walk back to the strip.
No way.
Did you get it accosted? I'm
No.
assuming with the shoes and everything.
I was
and the
so
chips.
nervous, you know. And then I went to the upstairs of my room at Venetian. I checked out. I went to the Bellagio to cash out my chips.
Yeah.
And I ended up in the back room in a set of handcuffs. And they wouldn't let me out. They made me sign a document that said I'll never come back to an MGM property. Wow. And it was really exhausting.
Oh
Like
my
that part,
gosh.
it stunk.
Well, and knowing you, I'm sure you didn't want to sign that at all. So that probably was.
Yeah, I
grueling.
really wanted to just like when I called my wife from jail, I said, Heather, I'm fine. Don't tell my mom, but I'm in jail. That's like what I told her.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be us learning how to play poker
I know.
together. Babe, what happened to
It's gonna
the
be
dream?
romantic. And I went back to jail. I was able to defend myself in court, which was a really cool experience.
Cool.
And they threw it out, and it was awesome. It was awesome.
Wow.
Then
Way to go.
thank you.
Way to go. That's
Yeah, I watched a
You
lot
get
of
to say
Judge
that.
Judy growing
Oh,
up.
Well, that's
Yeah,
going
yeah,
to take
yeah.
you there right now. Yeah.
It's Judge Judy. She does it all. So, yeah, that's a little bit of my card counting experience.
Did you, that was kind of towards the end. What was the first time you were busted at a casino like? Like, do you remember that? Like, were you like, because this, you sound pretty comfortable because you kind of know how it plays.
Yeah.
But like the first time.
Yeah, when you first start, and I think it's like this for most of the things we do, right? You just have like you're so aware of yourself.
Yeah.
Right? You're just like, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Right? You just don't know in anything.
Yeah.
You don't know what you don't know. So it's like your sense of threat is so high.
Yeah.
And so what happens with your training card counters, and I think this piece just was never a problem for me. I rarely feel nervous, and under pressure, I usually feel better. So, but what happens to most people is you just think everyone knows.
everyone knows.
Everyone knows. It's imposter syndrome, right? It's like when you go to do a new venture and you're like, everyone knows. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
I'm making
Yep.
this up.
You just do it though. And so, yeah, in the beginning, it was just like people normally they'll just come up to you and say, "Sir, we're so thankful for you, but you can play any game in the house except for blackjack." That's like the nice one.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, like that's a cool one.
We're starting to get the vibe from you.
Yeah,
you
you're
know
too.
what's going
They're
on.
nice. You're too good for us. We were going to refuse your play.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
A little wink. You're too good for us. Back away.
And I'm like, I'm going to go to my car. I'm going to shave my beard off.
No.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Shave my beard off.
Change your clothes.
Take it off because I had it on underneath and go back in, and so that's probably where I was definitely like bending the line a little bit more than I probably would have these days. But,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there was
you're
a
23.
documentary about you guys that came out around 2011, 2013.
I don't know the year, but somewhere around there.
Yeah, and it was called Holy Rollers. You can
Yep.
see it on Amazon.
Yep.
Still to this day. And some of the costumes that you guys wore were pretty dramatic. I mean,
Yeah.
you changed ethnicities, you changed
Yeah.
names legally.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
what you guys would do to find yourselves back into these places was,
Right. And it was more than just getting ourselves back into the casino. It was just fun.
yeah.
Oh.
Like it was just making it fun. Like
Yep.
I think one of the things that I learned from blackjack that was more important to me than probably any lesson I ever learned was I took my wife's student loans and I maxed them out. I mean, we didn't have anything.
Yeah.
I was like first two kids, we were on food stamps. Like we did not come from money,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but we got out of student debt through playing blackjack. Like I don't tell this to most people, but that's how
Let's tell it on the podcast for
yeah,
everybody.
tell everybody.
yeah.
So that's how we got out of it. But what it meant was, I'm going to take my life savings and I'm going to give it to you guys. This is actually how our team was structured. I'm going to give it to you. Now you're going to go to Las Vegas. My first time going to Las Vegas, I won I think it was like $65,000 or something. It was great.
Wow.
My teammate lost $100,000 that night, something around there. And I called him to check in on him. He was broken. And blackjack does this to you. You just lost $100,000 in the last 6 hours.
Wow.
Like that's a mental thing that's hard
That's huge.
Yeah.
to come back from.
Yeah.
You're like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with the system? And again, I always say the same thing. You trust the system. Or you just won 20 grand and you're like, I should stop.
Yeah.
That's how gamblers think.
Yeah.
Because math has no memory.
Yeah.
If you won $96,000 in the last 2 hours, the probability of you losing or winning the next hand is exactly the same as if you won or lost. It doesn't know. But our emotions, they are different things, right? So what would happen to us is we'd have to just learn to trust one another, because I'm giving you this money and you could take that money and equally pocket the entire thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The entire thing. And I have no idea.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
clue. No
Yeah.
clue. The only thing I have from you is your word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. And the people, so now you're building a business, because this was a company, right? It's a business. And so now we're developing a team. And this becomes and the documentary, I think actually, Brian Storkel is the producer of that documentary. He's an amazing producer. That's the lowest of all of his work. He's produced a lot of cool documentaries after that. And he was a member of our team as well. But the one thing I think he missed in the documentary was the need to steward trust between each other. And that was like, that's the culture. How do you in an organization steward and foster trust so that we can be open and honest with one another? Yeah. And I mean, we had a guy on the team lost $10,000, and he came and told us. Yeah. Lost it. And he was like, I don't know where the money is. And he had to pay it back. And he did over time. Yeah. And then he eventually found it in his couch. Wow. Which is easy to do. Yeah. More easy than you'd imagine. When you're walking around with hundreds of thousands of dollars all the time, it's easy to lose.
Throw down a bill or stack. Or
We'd have to, the way we'd do it is we'd stack them up in 10, we call them 10 stacks. So we'd stack, and then you'd stack a 10 stack, and then you'd rubber band it in a certain way, and then you'd fold it in a certain way, and then you'd put it in your shirt a certain way. And then when we flew, this is weird. So you're flying with, 150 grand in your pocket. TSA does not like that.
No, they're not big fans of that.
They're not big fans of that. But at the time, with the technology, as long as there's no metal on you, you could get through the detectors with it. Yeah. So, and there's nothing illegal about it. It's just a pain. Yeah. So we would sew the money into our shirts or sewed into our shorts. I'm not kidding you. Yeah. So I had like shorts made where there was like Velcro on the inside. I was like, oh, I could stick 10 grand here. Yeah. Wear socks. Like high socks, like my mountaineering socks I would wear on the plane. Just so I was like, oh, I bet I can get 30,000 in that leg and 20,000 in that leg. And I got busted once in Detroit by the DEA. Is that what this? Yeah, the DEA. And they thought I was moving drugs.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's like why do you need to hide this money? Like you know.
And I was like, I'm a professional card counter, and he was like, let's have some receipts, and I was like, they don't give receipts. Yeah. I don't know. And he's like, you're flying from Detroit to LA with all this money and a bunch of players' cards. Yeah. And a couple IDs. No, I didn't have the IDs. So it was a pretty bizarre.
So did you have to play the DEA blackjack?
Yeah. No kidding. No kidding. So what I loved about blackjack, and I would say this is like what it taught me was like, man, if I want to be a person who can foster trust in a business. And so the way we did that was meals. Like we ate together. Yeah. A lot. We shared meals together.
Same principle as house churches.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly, dude. A lot of meals, a lot of time, and it wasn't great. There's all sorts of issues in that team like there is in any other business. Sure. But I left eventually. It no longer was in alignment with what I was trying. Actually, I think what happened was I was able to use it for the purpose I was trying to use it for. And then, I had to kind of get to that ending point, but eventually exited it and glad for it.
Yeah, you've alluded several times that you've derived a lot of business principles, and you've shared a handful of those. What would you feel like is, now you're doing business consulting? Yeah. How does a card deck of 52 play into your life nowadays?
When I was playing these cards, my grandfather, the one who ran that company I mentioned, he took me out to lunch. He calls me Moose because I'm big, and I call him Big. I don't think I've ever called him Granddad or something. I only call him Big. And he said, Moose, what are you doing with your life? I said, what do you mean, Big? And the documentary came out. It's like we're getting like press and stuff. Yeah. And I'm easily flattered, right? Yeah. I loved myself. And he said, I was like, Grandpa, I'm playing cards, starting this business up. And he's like, it's not good enough. And I was like, what? He goes, it's not good enough for you, like for what God's given you. That was it. And it wasn't mean, it wasn't scolding, but it left me with this like, what am I doing?
Big question mark.
Yeah. I grew up like my grandmother, ringing Salvation Army bells. They were business owners, but very generous people. And I just was like, what am I doing? And so for me, and I believe this at 10 out of 10, it's like when the desires of your heart and the work of your hands are overlapped, like there you find great satisfaction in life. Yes. Right? So I had a fundamental problem with blackjack. I'm going to come back to like what I learned, but the fundamental problem was as a system, you're not actually producing value for anyone. Yeah. It's the world's greatest hack. Yeah. Right? It's like I could make if I had 1,000 hours in a casino and I came in with $200,000, I'm leaving with millions and millions of dollars.
Got it.
Which, by the way, is awesome.
Yeah.
That alone is awesome.
Yeah.
That is
Okay.
awesome.
That is super dope. That is super. There's nothing wrong. That is cool. But if you're doing this across multiple years,
Yeah.
and you start looking out and going like from a legacy perspective, I was only like 26, 27, but I'm like, I'm not producing anything for anybody.
I don't have anything to show.
Yeah.
And I haven't helped anybody.
Yeah, I haven't helped. And from a biblical perspective,
Yeah.
the Bible's so pro-business, it's remarkable. But the notion of it is that we're doing proper exchange of value. So in a sense, casinos are more ethical than I was.
Wow.
It took me a long time to get to this.
It's a wild thought.
Casinos are more ethical than I was as a card counter.
Wow.
The reason they're more ethical is because they're doing a straightforward, clear exchange. It's slimy,
Sure.
right? Like, I don't agree, whatever, but it's still a straightforward exchange.
Yeah.
What I did was I just went in and extracted with no clear exchange.
Yeah.
Right? And so I've decided all the end, the Christian card counting team was like, I was the least Christian of the entire group. Not because I was stealing from them, but really just because it was not a proper value transaction for me.
Yeah.
Right. So
And for like
Which is
what Grandpa
interesting.
said is like, you know better. Like almost like you know.
yeah, Grandpa was like, you have to take what God's given you and do more for people.
Yeah. I
And,
love that.
and Grandpa's very pro business. So he was like,
Yeah.
you'll find better ways to do this in the marketplace
Yeah.
than you will just in a casino. So
Wow.
that led me into card counting. But
It's interesting to me too. I mean, I read your article in Cigar Aficionado. It's a little subscription I've held on to for a number of years.
addiction.
Yeah. And the magazine, not the cigars. And you talk about you guys talk about talking people out of gambling at a table.
Yeah.
And you talk about how sometimes what you were doing led to baptizing people. And,
Yeah.
You know, so it seems like, did you find yourself just justifying some of those little wins, or do you feel like, oh, I didn't really think about it that way?
Yeah, I mean, to me, blackjack was more. I mean, it was a job.
Yeah.
It was a job. You know that. So I didn't think too much about it. It was like, you're offering a game. So on the other side of that, right? Here's a public game.
Yeah.
It's a public game. And we built the game because most likely you're going to lose. We'll advertise the crap out of it to try to get you to come and play. But we know statistically you're going to lose, we're going to win. But it's a public game, come and play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Totally, I'm in.
Invitation.
Yeah, I'm in. As long as it's like that, I'll play all day long. And you could be like, I don't want you to play. Well, I'm going to be like, sorry.
That's
Yeah.
not enough for me.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Sorry.
I'm sure you don't. Like, you've been extracting people's money forever.
Yeah.
I just know how to extract it better than you from you. So that being said, like, you can't build a life off of that.
No.
Like when I look at my sons, I think of the kind of men I want them to be. It's like, not just because you can gamify a system. Like, go do the hard work of from concept to birth.
Yep.
Like, build something,
Build something.
make something.
Yeah.
And so that's what I left to go do. But I think the blackjack thing, the lessons I take from blackjack, there's two of them that I hold on to a lot. One of which is trust. Like culture. I love culture. Like, I love it. And blackjack showed me, like, if you can bring people around something, but like that culture piece, like, people say that stupid phrase all the time, but it's not. It's not. Like, it's beyond not. It's the center of almost everything, because culture is relationships.
Yeah.
Right. It's how we steward our relationships. So if we can foster culture, bam. Professionally, so that was one half. The second half is like, I just became obsessed with strategy.
Yeah.
So all we talk about is strategy and cards.
Yeah.
Right? It's called basic strategy. Like, the world is strategy. So I left this business. I started a test prep company after failing at 4 or 5 different companies. And so I was actually starting a house church, or helping with a house church in Seattle. And I started an education company with a pal that we were able to grow to a multi-million-dollar company. But it was all based, it was like blackjack, but for students, it's like teaching kids how to take tests.
Yeah.
And it was just like, what's the strategy? What's the
Yeah, that's
strategy?
amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love
that's
it. So
fantastic.
I love it. I love to think like that. It's like, again, Chipotle, right? It's like, when I go to Chipotle, I love Chipotle.
It's so good.
I do too.
Don't blackball me or blacklist
Nope,
me for
I'm
this
right
Chipotle.
there with you.
but I go to Chipotle, I'm like, oh, is that chicken? And she's like, yes. And I, can I try some? She gives me a little bite of chicken. I'm like, oh, carnitas. That sounds interesting. And she's like, Mark, you were here 3 days ago. Right? And I'm sampling everything. And then I'm like, oh, and I made up this thing for Chipotle. And I did this for years. I'm not kidding. I did this for so many years. I'd say to the person, I'm like, look, I want like 50-50, beef and chicken, but like not like 2 scoops. I want like 2 scoops.
Yes.
And he'd do the first. But I learned that you don't say that to him in the beginning. You say it right when he's like right at the zenith of the first. I want carnitas. Lifts up the carnitas. And you go, actually, I just want to do like 50-50 carnitas barbacoa. And nobody wants to go all the way back down and drop all that meat on it.
No, they don't.
So
No.
they'll just go, and I'll go, I don't want you to get in trouble, but I really like meat. And the guy's like, get me in trouble.
Yeah.
Right? It
Becky
just loads
doesn't
that on
care.
there. It looks like you went to the zoo with a wood chipper by the time we're done. It's just meat
Yes.
is all over the place. We're double wrapping that thing.
Love
It's
it.
endless. Like it's unlimited amount of tortillas, right? So
Yeah.
every kid leaves with their own skin graft, and then we're just deconstructing and loading it back in. And
That's amazing.
I love it. So
That's genius.
yeah, it's kind of smart.
I
isn't it?
got 3 boys and a wife. We wait in the line.
Yeah.
We do Chipotle, and that's my new hack.
Yeah,
That's
try it.
amazing.
Try it. It works.
Be like, guys, what? I got
Yeah,
this.
and then it's the sneeze guard's too short too, so I'm always like breathing on all the food and like, get rid of me.
Yeah, that's good. That's
Yeah.
good.
Touch this.
Yeah.
It's a little
It's yours.
bait and switch. You're breathing on the food, so they're not really
Get
paying
out of here.
attention.
Yeah,
Get
yeah,
out of
yeah.
here.
Smart.
Get out of here. What do you guys think of blackjack? What strikes you about this whole idea?
I mean, I think one, I didn't realize the formulaic strategy behind it. Right?
For sure.
It's pretty much if I play cards at a casino, which has maybe been less than 10 times in my life, it's the game that I've always leaned to.
Yeah.
I think it's really fun to kind of figure that out.
Yeah.
But to think about all of the variations, to me, that's like such a big number. It didn't seem tangible.
For sure.
And then when you pull out the sheet here and you're showing us and you kind of walk us through this, you go, oh,
Yeah.
there's a different way.
Yeah.
So to me, it's intriguing.
Yeah.
It's also intriguing. I love it in the documentary. It's intriguing to me how it's a relational tool for you guys. That
Yeah.
really stood out to me. Right. So
It's like that. It's like that. Like almost like that sober fun when you're like 14 and you're hanging out with your friends and like everything's funny, or like you've never been funnier than the times that you were at the cafeteria table with your best friends.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that I love about like the changing the costumes and
Oh,
like
yeah.
doing
yeah.
changing
Yeah.
your name.
Yeah.
I mean that's the antics that like to me it makes this world so much fun.
It definitely felt like we were like running a pirate ship.
Oh, for sure.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
Oh, it
pirate
was like
radio for sure, right?
Totally pirate ship.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and I thought that was like, I always liked the pirates.
Yeah.
You want to be the British guys. Like,
No.
who cares about those guys?
nobody wants to be the
Steal
British
from
guys.
them.
Yeah, right. We're like, we want
Yeah.
to go find the buried treasure.
Yeah.
We're gonna do it as like a crew. And it was like, oh, it was a total felt like a total heist movie, which is my
Absolutely.
favorite. So I was like,
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
it's awesome, loved it.
I'm geared that same way too, like where I like if authority figures like that would make me mad. Right? We would really like you to stop playing our game. I'd be like, oh, I can't do it.
What
Like
I hear you saying is,
yeah,
keep playing.
yeah.
That's it. That's
What are
it.
you gonna do? And
Yeah.
they're like, we're gonna show you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's, and if you're, for your listeners, if you're interested in getting into blackjack, here's what I say about that. Like, the margin for error is very, very, very small. And very few people are able to cross over that line. Not that I'm special enough. I just stuck with it long
You
enough.
studied. You did the work.
And I had people that were always, I had a community around me that was always checking me.
Yeah.
So I was building a process for checking teammates and future teammates and vetting them.
Yeah.
And simultaneously, I was being vetted by me. But for the most part, the people, I look back at the people that were on that card counting team. And every single one of them are remarkable people.
Yeah.
I was just lucky to be along for the ride. I was some doofus from Kentucky, like no business being on something so cool. but-
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Do
Yeah.
you keep in touch with those guys, or do you guys ever get together and?
Yeah, good question. Some of the people I do, I don't, as the whole blackjack community, no.
Yeah.
No, and they're all over the country as well. When I stepped away from blackjack, I needed to step away from blackjack.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
yeah, because I can't chase 2 rabbits.
I'm
at
that way
once.
too. If I'm out, I'm out.
Yep. So when I was like, I'm ready to be an entrepreneur, I was like, I'm all the way done.
Yeah.
And blackjack's a little bit threatening because it's like you have to burn their boats. At some point, you have to burn the boats. right? You got to just do
Yeah.
it. And for me, it was like, we weren't ready. It's like having kids. You're never ready.
Yeah.
Good luck. I'm always ready to make them, but you're never ready to have them.
Yeah.
Right?
The aftermath.
Totally. But you got to burn the boats and you got to go freaking all in. And I think for me, like with blackjack was like, when I was done. I was really more interested in figuring out, could I actually do something that would be beneficial to people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe make some coin on the side. That would be pretty fun too. But to that purpose, blackjack was great. And yeah, I mean, what Colin's built over at blackjackapprenticeship.com is, I mean, those tools weren't around when we were training. It's world class. It's really good. So if you want to become a degenerate gambler,
No,
Go on
advantage
over.
player.
Oh, advantage player.
Because you guys didn't bring on gamblers.
That's right. We didn't.
Yeah.
You might be no, correct me if I'm wrong. Are you he might be the first person where he took a side hustle, and we've discussed this a little bit in the beginning, was his main hustle.
That became your main
and then,
hustle.
Yeah, life was the side hustle.
Yeah,
and then it started there. That's pretty great.
Kind of. Yeah.
I dig
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and I've kind of never stopped the same work as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So it was like training trainers, like so when I was running my company, and I didn't have a business degree.
Yeah.
You know, it was just like I just wanted to do it, and I thought it'd be cool to do it for myself. So, but as we started my last business, Torch Prep, it was like, you know, at first we called it the locker room. There's like 6 of us. We were renting this old laundry room. The whole room was covered in whiteboards, and it was like really fast to mobilize and change and launch and back super quick. And we hit this point where it was like we just hit a ceiling, and we were expanding, but the partnership was getting strained, and I was frustrated. And as we were growing, as we grew, our degree, the caliber that I wanted of the best. Like I wanted for this arena, the vertical we were in, I was like, I want to be the best in the entire nation at this.
Yeah.
So that's what I expected. And then but our caliber started to drop. And then following that, our revenue started to drop. And I've never had revenue drop before. You know, just I was in that early stage for a business. And then slowly, it just stopped being fun.
Yeah.
It started getting stressful.
Yep.
And I thought it was me. So I was like, what's wrong with me? Like, what? I suck. And I was really frustrated at myself. And what I didn't realize, and it was me, but it wasn't because my heart wasn't in the right place.
Yeah.
It's because my understanding of the system of business hit the ceiling.
Yeah.
And you only know what you know.
Yeah, you just tapped out because that's all you knew.
And I knew I was trying to fix it. I was trying to solve it, but eventually, right, and looking, and I just love this idea that somebody smart enough has done something better enough, consistently enough that I could just copy it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Glean it.
No, that's
Glean
the
it.
best
Yeah.
part of like the age
Yeah.
of knowledge and everything that we
Right.
have now is like, I've seen this before.
Yeah, and so I was able to do that career-wise. That's what I train on. The same system that somebody trained me on in my business, that we broke through a ceiling. We doubled our revenue. For me, I had a bunch of little kids at home, so I was able to go from working like 60 hours a week to 20. And I was like,
Wow.
it was awesome. I was like, God, you blessed me so much. But it wasn't through like, you know, I'm a charismatic person. It wasn't that, right? That can only get you so far.
Yep.
It was through the team. I was like, oh, everybody talks about team, but it was like, for me, it wasn't just team. It was like structure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, how do you put people together in the right way to unlock growth? And
Yeah.
so that the systems are really important if we can have the discipline to stick with it. So
Yeah. Now you're teaching us, like you said, a system that really helped you succeed. What's the name of that company, and what are you doing now?
Yeah. So I train a system called EOS, which stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System.
Oh, right on.
Very quickly, back in the day, there's this guy named Gino Wickman. I think he's a genius, but it started off by a lifelong entrepreneur who 21 launched his first company, 25 got pulled into his family business, ran that for 7 years, and finding a need of a turnaround. Eventually exited that company, sold that off, and started really just gravitating towards entrepreneurs. And while Gino was in that process, what Gino realized is he had a real knack for understanding the way entrepreneurial operating systems work. There's a lot of material written on this now, but at the time there was not, right? Every business book was designed for corporate.
Yeah.
Right. So the startup Wild West that we live in now, which is the coolest, like this today, it's the coolest. Like, this is the coolest. It's so freaking cool how we can start companies in this country.
Yeah.
And our resources are there. Well, so what Gino did was he just started cobbling together these ancient, like timeless tools. There's nothing magic about EOS. It's really just saying what are the timeless disciplines and behaviors that make for like a great entrepreneurial business.
Yeah.
And so out of that, he went all in. He just created this process called EOS. And I got introduced to it in 2015 when I was running my entrepreneurial business. And EOS is really designed around organizing the human capital in a business and getting everyone on the same page about where we're going, and then instilling discipline and accountability throughout the organization.
Yeah.
So this, I mean, I just love this, right? So the vision of where we're going, that's our strategy, right? So it's like, but comprehensively building a strategy.
Yeah.
Discipline and accountability for me is like, well, that's what I did in card counting.
Yeah.
I made sure my players knew how to play right, my teammates, right? Like I like discipline.
Give them the tools.
Yeah, and if I don't have accountability, I fall apart.
Yep.
You know, I'm like water.
Yeah, I know.
Fat.
I'm the same way.
Eating Twinkies all day without accountability. And then healthy, which is it's designed to make leadership teams cohesive and open and honest. And this is really like, that's the work that I love to do more than anything is building strategy, making sure the right things are getting done. And then, because I am a really relational person, so it's like making sure that our relationships are open and honest. And you know, so that's what I do for a living. That's called EOS. So I work with entrepreneurial companies and their leadership teams.
That's amazing.
Super fun.
Oh, that'd be so
Like,
much fun.
I actually, learning EOS was the hardest thing I've ever done, and it beat out blackjack.
Wow.
By like that much.
Huh.
And blackjack was like, but it's the same thing. It's just building out a framework and having the discipline to go through it and maintain it. Right? And that's like a hard thing for all of us.
Yes.
Is creating a system where we keep doing the right thing.
That's it.
Dude, because I'm terrible at that.
Especially when you have
it's-
ADHD.
Yeah, which I do. Oh my God.
Me too.
So I'm like diagnosed severe ADHD,
Yep.
which is why I like systems so much, right? So I lean towards
Yeah.
systems because it keeps me focused.
I'm diagnosed as well, and so like when
Same.
I know all of us.
Yeah,
were
I was like,
this
is a
one
disaster.
of us. One of yeah.
I'm surprised we've gotten this far in the conversation.
Truly.
Yeah.
I just peed in my pants.
But like while you were saying things, I'm like, I'm totally that same way. Totally that same way. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, you know, there's so much more opportunity in business than we realize. And then I think if you're coming from a bootstrapper like I was, what I just didn't realize is like everybody hits a ceiling.
Yeah.
Everybody hits a ceiling.
Yep.
Like every business hits a ceiling. And those who are able to get around the ceilings are the ones that we all look at and go like, wow, how did they do that?
Yeah.
And the reality is they had some kind of framework or process to get them there. And so, yeah, what I get to do professionally now, it's the culmination of everything I've ever learned. And it's really a dream. But
Blackjack gets you there, and then also who you are is like, being so personable. I think that's perfect fit.
And I really like what at the end, I talk to anybody, and at the end of the day, I want like your soul to be so filled with purpose in life that your eyes have so much light in them that you look at your life and you go, this is a great life that I've been given.
Yeah.
And so many things steal that from us.
Yeah.
Right. And we get so banged up, myself as well. Right. We've fallen on our faces or just, jumped on my face.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
It's true.
But, so for me, it's like, I look back at what my mom was like when she was a single mom and she had no money. And I'm like, I get to help entrepreneurs create businesses that are healthy, so that people like my mom are thriving in this place of leadership. Not just thriving because it's safe, thriving because they know they're creating value too.
Yep.
There's so much dignity in creating value for other people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I get to get paid really well to help businesses grow, but we grow in a healthy way that's extremely still market driven. But
Yeah.
dude, it's like, thank you, God. This is what I want to do for my entire life.
Yeah.
This is
Wow.
This is great. It's cool.
And, I mean, to be able to do something that you love as a career,
Yeah.
that is, like you said earlier, it's the dream spot,
Yeah.
right?
That's right.
It's the spot.
That's
so,
right.
man, I love that for you too.
Yeah. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. So, it's like, it's a grind like everything else.
Yeah.
But it's almost, it's awesome though. So
It's worth it.
I think so. You
Yeah.
know, it's like, I I read this Proverbs once, and it said, the purposes of a man's heart are deep waters, and a man of understanding will draw them out. I have no idea what that means.
Yeah.
But
I said, like, yes.
Yeah, I'm like,
yes, I understand that ancient work.
I don't know how to swim, so this is going to be very difficult.
But I kind of became convinced that like God has, whether you believe it or not, I don't care. The way I look at everybody is, and I hope this increases like their value, is like I look at you and go like, there's deep purposes inside of you.
Yeah, for sure.
But scar tissue and environments and who knows what, self-belief, there's all sorts of reasons why those purposes don't get drawn out.
Yes.
And when that starts to get clogged, when your purpose pipe gets clogged, like all sorts of shit gets backed up in our lives.
It does.
Right? So I'm like, I got to help unclog that for people.
And nobody likes a clogged colon.
No. Nobody.
Is that where your purpose is?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that where that's
I got a blackjack story about that.
Well, we'll save that one for another episode. Hey, Mark,
Probably
thanks so much
should.
for being on the show with us, man.
Yeah,
I loved having you. I think
totally.
that there's so many gold nuggets in what you've shared.
Cool.
I'm excited. You know, I tend to listen to and watch the podcast a couple times. I know that I'm going to do that with this. I'm going to
cool.
just savor it, take a lot of notes.
Yeah.
You know, I'd love to have you back at some time to talk about the entrepreneurial systems that you work in and stuff. Because I think, you know, for our listeners, we're trying to build people that are doers.
Yeah.
And so to introduce people to a system of doership.
Yeah.
It might be what some people need to get off the couch.
Totally. Yeah.
And that's the hope. You know, I mean, obviously we spend a lot of time relationally just trying to gauge the story and inspire people. But we're also hoping to use some of these practical tools to help people kind of move even further. So,
well, if that doesn't work, they can become gamblers.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is watch this video, rewind it a handful of times, and you'll probably pick it up just from this alone. So, Mark, thanks so much, man.
Thank you.
Blessings.
Thank you
so much.
Yeah, brother.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
This table's getting a little hot, though. Let's get out of here.
Yeah, it's getting a little hot.
Get a little hot.